Now we have created the stock market of music. So basically, anybody who is a fan of music or wants to invest in music can buy shares of artists' careers, and the artist will receive money in that transaction.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lennons. This week features a returning guest, Justin Longo. He is the CEO and founder of a company called MariNation Music. MariNation provides a platform that allows artists to put their businesses up on their platform for then fans to purchase shares within that company and invest in the artist. And once you invest in the artist, as that artist's career grows and becomes more successful, whether that be in major syncs, big streaming numbers, a viral hit on TikTok, maybe a major performance at like a Super Bowl halftime show, those shares will increase in value as with the stock market. So MariNation Music is taking the stock market and turning it into a very specific niche thing for artists and musicians. Now, there are a lot of companies that do this nowadays. And another one that is fairly new to the game is Blau's Royal. But that's a little bit different because that allows you to invest in specific songs in the sound recording royalties, which is very different than what Justin and MariNation Music is doing. But still a very similar concept and a very new thing for artists to be able to put up their own very intellectual property and then have fans invest and give them money for that. And then this money that they garner from the fans investing in their careers can be used to purchase more gear, spent on marketing, collaborations, making an album, touring, whatever they need to funnel and fund their careers. That's what this money can be used for. There's a lot of stuff to go into. There's a lot of questions that come up and how this works and how it's functioning. So we dig into a lot of that stuff. Justin gives some insight on how artists can get started, what types of data points they're looking for. Are they looking for bigger, smaller artists? Are they looking at your publishing revenue? Are they looking at your streaming revenue, social media, all of that stuff? There's some really good key insights in here. Different venture that artists may want to consider if you're looking for some investing in fans. I mean, taking your super fans and turning them into loyal fans by literally investing in your career, just giving you money is pretty impeccable. But before I let you go and dive into the conversation, I want to remind you to sign up to my email list. That is the best way for you to be notified about new episodes. I'd also appreciate a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you listen to your podcast. If you're listening on YouTube and watching on YouTube, be sure to smash the subscribe button, hit the like button, and leave a comment below if you have any questions about this episode or anything that was said during this episode. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and pretty much every other social media platform. If you or somebody you know would be a good guest for this show, there's a link to a guest request form. I'm always looking for incredibly talented music producers and music professionals to have on the show, specifically in the dance music space. So if that's you or somebody you know, please fill out the form below. All right, without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with the CEO and founder of MariNation Music, Justin Longo. Justin Longo, thank you so much for being back on the show. This is, I think, my second repeat guest. So this is really exciting. Congrats on being one of the first as well.
Well, I'm honored. I didn't know that stat, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll have to send you some kind of award in the mail or something so you can hang it. So next time you're on the show, you'll have it sitting behind you.
Yeah, it'll be right above my shoulder.
Right above your shoulders. So first of all, let's give a brief. It's been a year or two since you've been on. Can you give an update on what you've been doing? Maybe a brief overview of what MariNation Music is, and then we'll kind of start from there.
So the last time we had a conversation, our company has since pivoted from that old direction where we were investing money on behalf of music artists. Now we have created the stock market of music. So basically, anybody who is a fan of music or wants to invest in music can buy shares of artists' careers, and the artist will receive money in that transaction. So a lot has transpired. It's a very simple way of putting it, but it's in a great spot right now. We're currently live right now, and we're launching in July. So you know all the speed, full speed ahead, as they say right now. So Yeah, but
Absolutely.
it's been quite the year since we've last talked.
Yeah. So one of the things that comes to mind is I think when the last time we spoke, we were kind of peak pandemic or maybe kind of just past the peak. What does the industry look like? What does it look like now versus what it did then in terms of investing in careers? Now that live is coming back as well in big swaths, like we're seeing
Mm.
huge revenue in live events. How is that kind of shifting the market in terms of this particular sector of fans investing in artists?
That's a great question. The last time we spoke, right, there were current cancellations of tours, and there were more on the way. And now, as you're saying, the music industry is, starting to get back on its feet from a touring perspective. Music investing is going to hit a boom like no other because of the more revenue that's coming into the market, and investors can see more of a return from our model. There are other models where it's just investing in royalties or investing in the blockchain crypto space, but our model encompasses, the whole artist as an asset so that you can buy shares of their revenue and future revenue.
Okay. Great. So as you're speaking here, I'm thinking of like, okay, so how does this work? If I'm a fan, how do I invest? And then on the artist perspective, if I'm an artist, how do I set this up for my fans? And then going even deeper, what types of things are in the contracts? What types of things do I need to set up? Is there a separate business entity that I need to set up? Let's dive into kind of all of that. Let's first of all talk about from the fan perspective and what's available right now on MariNation Music. How do I get involved in investing in an artist career? What
Mhm.
does that look like? Walk me through that.
It's a very simple process, similar to setting up a brokerage account on Merrill Lynch or TD Ameritrade. You basically register on our app. We collect your information. You set up an account with us. You connect your bank account or debit or credit card, and then you can look at the roster of artists that are currently on the platform and buy and sell trade shares of that artist. So basically, very simple process. From a music artist standpoint, you would create the offering on MariNation. You also have the ability to buy shares of other artists. But from an artist standpoint, when you're creating this offering, we collect royalties. We connect your royalty account, whatever that may be, with ASCAP or BMI or, all of the other ones, CD Baby, DistroKid. We receive, a statement of how many royalties you've received over the past, year or two, whatever it may be, how long that account's been intact, and then we calculate that mixed with your social influence. We collect your data from a social impact, how many followers, how many fans, monthly fans, listeners you're engaging on Spotify and all of the other streaming platforms. And then you create that offering. We tailor that exactly to how much your music career may be worth in the market. And then that goes on MariNation after, we review that information and we approve that on the platform. So I know you asked about the investors, the artist, and then I think there was another question that I may have
Yeah. We can touch on
forgot
them.
about.
We can break them apart because I know it was kind of a loaded question. Now from the artist perspective, the fans can invest and purchase shares. Well, what is a share? What does that entitle?
So the share is part ownership of future royalties. So think of this as the stock market. I
Mhm.
do these analogies. Sorry about that. It's easily understandable when you have something to reference, right? So the stock market. So
Mhm.
in the stock market, if you were to buy shares of Amazon, you simply pay them a price, a share price, which may be 100, $300, whatever it is, and you own a small, minute percentage of Amazon. It would work the same way as an artist. So if I'm a fan, I can buy a small percentage of, say, Beyonce or Drake or whatever it may be. And then as they grow as an artist or as they decline, your share price is determined upon how much they grow or how much they decline from their royalties and from their social media influence and their whole career, if that
Mm.
makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It's just getting maybe a little bit more technical here, so I can better understand, and for the listeners as well. But how do you determine how many shares are available for an artist? I mean, that goes into the worth, I'm sure, and all of the stuff you just mentioned. But break it down as to how many shares. Like, how do you know how many shares you'd be worth? Basically, like, what's kind of the range? What's kind of the standard?
That's a great question. That can go in lines with like a marketing purposes. So if I'm an artist and I have, it's basically the overall valuation divided by the shares. And what you're trying to do is come up with a price that is attractive to your fan base. Say if you want to have a lower price to, offer to your fan base so that more fans can invest in your career and own it and, come along um, of this journey that you're on, then so be it. Or if you want to limit the number of shares and have a higher price, that's completely up to you as an artist. And we have it right now where the artist is, in control of how many shares they want to put on to the platform. So that's basically how that works. From how do you gauge what per share price you would want to put on the platform?
Mm. And who are some of the artists that are using your platform and maybe some of the success stories that they have had? It's just a very interesting. Have you seen any unique stories about how this is kind of transpiring?
Yes. So, currently we want to work our way up to, the A-list stars of our day.
Taylor
But
Swift,
right now
Beyonce.
we have a couple up and coming artists. Right now it's more beginner to mid-tier artists. We have this one artist called Chris R. He's in the Latin American, genre. And, his fan base is, a couple 100,000 on social media, on Instagram alone, and that's been pretty successful so far. We've had investors buy shares of his, and he receives a percentage of that money to fund studio time, new instruments, or marketing, advertising, whatever it may be to grow his career and increase his share price for the investors, as well as grow as an artist and make more music.
Mm. So going back to more of the consumer, if I buy one of an artist share for say $50, um, how do I go about what do I get with that? Is that completely determined by the artist? Is it break that down a little bit?
What you get is a future valuation of the artist's return. So that basically means the more as they grow, your shares will grow. So if you want to realize that, $50, say you bought yesterday for $50 and now it's $50.50, you can realize that by trading and selling those shares. That's completely up to you as a consumer and an investor if you want to trade those shares to another investor on the platform and realize that 50-cent gain in this example. So that's how you would realize the money aspect, if that's what I believe you might be asking. Um, that's similar to the stock market. When you sell shares of a company, they match you with another buy order, if you will, not to get too technical on
Mhm,
you, but it's basically somebody else is buying your shares, you're selling your shares, they buy that money, they buy those shares, excuse me, and pay you that money. And we have the same system on our platform. We match buyers and sellers and people who are looking to trade.
mm. So are there any perks for purchasing, shares, or is that up to the artist? Is that something you guys set up? How does that work?
This might sound crazy, but we haven't gotten that far, Lennon. I know that's a very interesting, it's an interesting idea. We've had the thought about, like, how can you connect? Like, the NFT did an example of this where you buy an NFT and you get maybe an exclusive pass or an early release or something of those lines.
Yeah.
It is enticing. It's interesting idea, and I'd love to hear your ideas and anybody else's, on those lines, because I think it's a good idea to explore, connecting the intangible with the tangible, from like the technology on your phone to maybe like an in-person experience.
Hmm. Do if there's no perks just yet, which I think is an interesting concept. However, I think a lot of artists get caught up in like uh, giving these things away or doing these things, and they end up being costing them more time.
Mm,
And so, like, giving them access to a concert, for example, is one thing. But another, some artists typically do like, oh, handwritten postcards or personalized videos. Well, if you have 50 of those, that's a lot of time it's going to take to fulfill those requirements. So, is it worth the value? How much is your time worth at that? That's the question. But if these aren't paying, if these aren't the kind of perks
mhm.
that fans are getting, are there like dividends that are paid out, or how would that work? Or do you have to sell the shares in order to realize your gain?
Right now, that's a great question. You have to sell the shares to realize your gains right now. We are going to incorporate dividends, as the stock market does that also. We'll do that at the discretion of the artist. If an artist wants to give dividend payments to their investors, then, they will incorporate that, just as, they determine the number of shares that they, offer to their fans. So, yeah, it's a very great point, because you want to see some physical, return on your money as you're an investor in this. Um, so yes, we are looking into incorporating dividend payments and all the like.
This is such an interesting sector of music as well. There's so many different businesses and solutions being popped up where fans can or artists can get funding for their careers. And this is one of those options, is selling shares in their business, because every artist runs a business. You are a business. But there are also different sectors of the industry where you're able to purchase specific parts of an artist's career. For example,
Hmm.
Blau's platform Royal is allows you to invest directly in the royalties of a song. How is that different from what you're providing? Or is it different?
Yes, it's a similar concept, right? I believe we're trying to accomplish the same thing at the end of the day. The case with Royal.io, and I'm not an expert on their platform, but I believe that they use blockchain and the crypto technology. We're currently trying to combine the traditional investing, as you would invest in like a catalog of music,
Mhm.
with, the accessibility for users.
Mm,
So basically, the Royal.io is very accessible for users. If I'm not mistaken, the price to invest is relatively low. Whereas another direction with the music investing space is, you can invest in large catalogs where, the minimum for some of these big catalogs is $100,000. Some can be millions of dollars, right? We're
mhm,
trying to bridge that gap where we have a tangible asset with the accessibility to users. So you are receiving value backed by an asset, which is the royalties of the artist, right? It's money, it's physical money coming in each month, each day by streams. And we have the aspirations to incorporate touring and merchandise and partnerships and all of that to have, create this asset as an artist. The
mm,
artist is the company, the artist is the asset, and then have the ability to make it accessible to the general public and their fan base.
mm. So, for an artist, this is kind of my last question before I transition into something you mentioned earlier in the episode. But before an artist considers or jumps into this boat of setting themselves on MariNation or a similar platform and having fans invest in their careers, what are some things they should consider prior to doing this? Are there any red flags? What are the green flags?
Mhm.
Are you playing Luigi's Mansion over there?
The light has it's by like a movement, and
uh,
I don't think I'm moving too
you
much.
got to start dancing while you're talking here.
Yeah, if I just start waving my hands randomly, that's what it is. There are risks involved. Anyone, I believe, that tells you there aren't any risks with anything really is lying to you. But
Yeah,
there
I
are
agree.
risks involved. We, are very transparent and upfront with artists and investors that there is a possibility that you may lose money in this process, as in any investment. In that our job is just the middleman to just give the investor the information about the artist, give them the tools for them to make the decision, whether they want to invest in an artist now or later or not at all. And we also do that with artists where, this is a risk for investors. They are investing money in your career. We do have plans to make parameters so that the money is used for the growth of the artist and not them renting a private plane and going to, the Mykonos for the next month or so. Right? It's
Yeah.
the money is for the artist's benefit. It's for their growth to, become the best music creator you can. So that's what the risks and flags and all of that are attached to this.
Mhm. So how do you know when if I'm an artist, how do I know when would be a good time to start considering this as an option?
We're open to any artist right now, beginner, middle, or superstar. It depends on where you are in your situation. We're not going to promise this is a overnight solution to all of your money problems and music problems, right? It's just another revenue for you to grow money. It's for you to connect with artists, investors on a deeper level. It's just another solution for you to you know become a great artist on your journey, whatever that may look like for you. So if you're a
Mhm.
middle artist or a beginner artist and you want to, have some upfront money right now to grow your career, however that is, that's for you. If you're a superstar artist and you want to connect to investors or fans on a deeper level and have them become, partners in this journey, then
Mhm.
it's for you also.
Do you think that with the live industry coming back and artists being back on the tour, do you think that this particular sector of fans investing in or artists using this their touring as a way like, "Hey, you can invest in this, you can earn
Mhm.
money from this." Do you think that that's going to boost? Do you think that's gonna bring? How do you think that's going to affect this kind of partial ownership in artist business as they're touring all over the world?
I think if you approach it from the mindset where you're, a partner with this artist and you see them selling
Mm,
out arenas or big shows, that gives you confidence in that person, right? From me, my perspective, I would see that as a positive where, okay, this person takes their career serious enough to go out and perform in front of people. That's admirable in its own right. And then B, they have an actual fan base to come and watch them play and come and wear their t-shirts or stand out in the rain to see them speak or meet them, right? That's a very positive thing if I'm an investor or a fan and I'm, owning a percentage of this career. Like, I love to see that. I see them growing in that aspect.
mhm. And I thought of my question as you were answering that. I was you mentioned ownership, in your response. When I purchase shares in the business, I'm receiving ownership in the business. Does that mean I'm receiving ownership in any of the copyrights or any of the public performance or anything like that? Or what exactly am I getting ownership in?
Mm. The ownership is tied to the money, to the revenue of the artist.
Okay.
So right now the copyrights are completely owned by the artist 100%. I've seen, some directions where, in the stock market you have voting rights, right? I don't know if we're going to go down that line where fans can vote, hey, I want to see you do XYZ song with featured artist.
Mm,
I think that might get a little dicey. We want to have the artists maintain artistic integrity and their own copyrights and be complete owners of their creative work. So,
mm. I think that's a very rare thing too because artists nowadays, they sign record label contracts and they kind of give up, who they are as an artist, and it's gone into the hands of these executives that basically tell them what to do, what to say. But that takes away from the creative freedom that they have and the creativity that they're going to have on their music. And it's like, you signed me for that creativity to begin with. Why are you trying to
mm,
take it away? So I can see how that could be a dicey situation in that aspect. But I also see how it could be beneficial, where an artist may be like, okay, I'm looking at changing and trying something new. What types of things would you all like to see me do?
Hmm.
But at that point, do you really want to go to the investor platform and share those? Or would you rather just take to Instagram and share a story and, do a quick poll type thing?
That's a great point because investors will definitely have different motives than say the typical fan would. They would probably want to see you know do the formula of what makes a hit song, right? So that we
Hmm.
can make more money off of this, as opposed to make a great song that not a lot of people may or may not like, that but you believe in it and you were inspired by it.
Hmm. So let's say, I mean, I have a bazillion questions for you because it's such an interesting sector, such a new sector of the industry that is so different, and it's very exciting to follow. But do you see some concerns of maybe some of the stock market Wall Street bros coming through and throwing in a bunch of money and really kind of expecting a takeover or kind of
Hmm.
control, and rather than supporting the creativity and like more of like a donation type thing, they're like, hey, I just purchased 1,000 shares of your business, I want some say in what you're doing. Are you
Hmm.
concerned of that, or how do you handle these really high volume deep pocket investors?
We've went through a bunch of use cases, different narratives of what could possibly happen and transpire. In
Hmm.
this case, investors and fans will have different reasons for investing in artists. As you're saying, the stock investors that come from that industry, the financial industry, would probably want the analytics and want to see a rate of return and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the other side, a loyal fan would just want to support the artist outright. If you have shares that are going for $10, like, I'll buy a bunch of your shares because I love your music and I support you. And if this helps your career, then I'm all in. So
Hmm.
there are different cases of why people would use this from an investor standpoint.
Hmm.
In relation to the pitfalls that may come from the different types of users, we are actively putting in protocols and security measures so that you know it's an even playing field for all of the users, where no one can take advantage of another person or take advantage of the artist. So we are putting parameters in. Like I said earlier, we don't want the artist to receive the money and go live on a beach for the rest of their life. But if that's what they want, of course, so be it, right? But
Hmm.
the idea around this is to have the parameters in place where the money is used for the betterment of the music career.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. It's just you get two different mindsets because you have people who know a little bit about investing, have people who know nothing about investing, and then you have the experts who are knee deep and are trading every second of the day. So there's kind of this fine market, and I'm sure there's a few people in the fan base that do that, but it makes sense to see, you know, having fans support them just because they're fans of the artist and their music. And if I give you money, that's going to enable you to create the art that I love listening to and watching and going and seeing live and whatnot. So there is a different mindset, but it's just in the United States here, it makes it difficult because we live in such a top down society,
Mm.
and it's comes from the top and comes down. So people are always looking to make money, and if there's no way to make money, what's the point? But on the flip side, a fan of an artist who, like an average Swifty, is not necessarily caring about the revenue that she's bringing in. They just love her so much and are happy to support her. So I can see both arguments, but I can see how it could get murky if they cross too closely.
This will sound weird, but I've had this vision about this whole direction, and this will go off on a tangent, and you can stop me whenever.
No,
But I
please.
have this vision where I'm driving in my car. My friend group loves. We used to love sharing music, and we'd get on each other for like bragging about, oh, we share this new song or whatever, and now the other person loves the new song. And I digress. But I
Yeah.
have this vision where I'm driving in my car and I'm listening to a song I really love. And I am an investor in that artist's career. And I feel that, you know, I'm making money while I'm listening to music, which is like a great thing. I don't know about you, but I would love that feeling.
Yeah.
Um, and then also like I'm just a part of something that I love, and it's making me money at the same time, and I'm also enjoying it. And it's just, I don't know, I just have this vision of me driving, listening to a music that comes out of the blue. I know that I'm an investor in this artist, and I think it's just such a cool idea that I'm part of this artist career financially, and also I can experience it and enjoy it too.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. It's there's nothing cooler than being like, "Hey, I'm an investor in that track." Like, no,
Yeah.
you're not only did you put me onto that track, but I'm investing in that track. You're already like, "Okay, you win. You win the argument. You win that one. I'll give it to you." But yeah, it's like I said, I love the way that this is going, especially mixing it with blockchain and NFTs and all that stuff. I think NFTs have kind of seen their days. But it'll be interesting to see how technology continues to evolve and how web3 kind of evolves into this, and cryptocurrencies, if that's going to become a thing. And now it's kind of like we've seen a lot of things. The pandemic allowed us to try so many different things with
Hmm.
technology, and we saw a lot of them fail. Like live streaming became a huge thing, and it still is a big thing, but it I don't think it'll be nearly as big as it ever was. But it'll be interesting to see how technology continues to change this landscape and how people see perspectives. And who knows, in 5 years, instead of Spotify, there might be just one big investment platform where you can listen to all the music you've invested in, and
Mm.
it just might be like only artists who have been invested in are on this platform. And who knows? There's always something to pull away from and get away from these big companies that are not paying them fairly. And like, hey, my fans will pay me $100. That's more than Spotify's paid me in 3 years in royalties with 10 million streams, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, it's a very interesting concept, and I appreciate you coming on here and sharing all that and answering some questions.
Well, thank you. It's I'm interested in the future also. I'm sure you are too. And we've had discussions about this where, I'm very fascinated with the artificial intelligence, thing. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've listened to the Drake and the Weekend song that came out using
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. I mean, I'll be completely honest. I love the song. I
Yeah.
think it's really great. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a oracle, but I don't know what it means to the music industry if like artificial intelligence can make like a sick song like that.
Mhm.
um I don't know if it's a bad thing either, because I love the song. I think music's a great thing, and the more we can create, the more I think the world will be happier place also. But what are your thoughts on like the artificial intelligence and that sort of thing with music?
Oh, well, there's a few things that I'm glad you asked. So I have a couple things that first come to mind. Number one is the the ability and free will to be able to have access to these tools. And for example, me, I can take a Drake song and I can take Drake's voice and Taylor Swift's voice and make them write a song. I don't have any ownership or legal ability to do that.
Hmm.
But since the general misconception in the copyright community and people who don't understand music rights and intellectual property is just because they can do it means they're able to do it means they can do it. So
Hmm.
people are going to take Drake and Taylor Swift and mash them together and upload them. That's just naturally going to happen. And then for other fans, it's a matter of, is this the real Drake and Taylor Swift? Is this the
Yeah.
real, so it's like, who is this? And at that point, people are going to create things that I think are very close, like collaborations that Drake may collaborate with, or Beyonce may collaborate with, or Taylor Swift, and it will be very enticing. It's going to be very difficult to decipher what's real and what's not. The
Mm.
second thing is is artificial intelligence is not eligible for copyright registration because it lacks human authorship. And the Copyright Office is currently holding meetings and stuff like that. So these things are not able to make money, but there's going to be a flood of them. So on top of being able to discern who's who, it's going to become very difficult on who's to pay. Who do I pay for this?
Hmm.
Who actually owns this? And I think that's going to be a very big factor in this. Um, Number two is I don't think AI is going to be able to give the soul that a human player can provide. I think we'll be able to have, like for example, a really intimate jazz song performed by AI, but I don't think it's going to have that feel where we have a live jazz band performing and
Hmm.
actually feeling and really enunciating on the different parts of the dynamics of the song. Um, I think AI will get very close, very, very, very close, but I don't think that it will happen um, to a point. I don't know. It's so hard to see because we've had such close calls with AI, and with Drake in the weekend. That was to the average listener, they probably wouldn't be able to tell that it was fake. Um, but I'm very curious to see how it's gonna play out. I'm hoping that AI is used more of as a tool than it
Hmm.
is as an instrument to destroy and replace,
Mm.
musicians, and I think there will be entire categories of AI generated music. I think there's just gonna have to be buckets, of people user generated content, like an entire YouTube just dedicated to this AI generated. And I think why wouldn't you? Because it's going to create different partnerships and different ideas and collaborations, and people are going to create crazy things, and AI is going to create crazy things that may inspire other people to do these things. So I think there's pluses and minuses. I think most people are terrified that it's going to replace musicians. I don't think it's going to replace. I think it's going to be a very, very strong tool that musicians will be able to use very effectively. Is kind of where I'm at right now. That could change tomorrow. That could change after lunch. Um, so it depends. But that's kind of where I'm at now, and I guess I've held that for the last couple months.
It's
So
interesting. We'll see. We'll see.
we'll see.
Hopefully, it'll do more good than bad, right?
Before we go off on too many more tangents, Justin, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time today and clearing up some of these investor questions that is such an interesting market and interesting sector in the industry right now. So I appreciate you taking the time. And before I let you go, is there anything that you would like to conclude with, and then how can the listeners how can the listeners keep up with you and MariNation Music and maybe follow up with any questions on this episode?
So if people want to learn more, they can go to marinationmusic.com. We have a link to our app that is currently live. You can just follow the guidelines that we have in place. On Instagram, we're at Mari, MARI __ nation. And those are basically the two places. And with that being said, Lennon, I appreciate you having me on, for the second time. Maybe we can go for the hat trick someday. Um, but it's been a pleasure. I think that we're living in a great time if we use technology to our advantage, and do it in a genuine way. I think, the sky's the limit. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I think we're both two of the same on that sentiment. So thank you, Justin, for your time. I appreciate it. And we will chat next time on the show.